Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Yeah, I'm joined with Liz Wilcox, who I had met Liz back at Justin Schenck's Growth Now Live event back in May of 2022. And we had a common theme where we're living in an RV, and she did live in an RV at one point. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So, looking forward to this conversation. And Liz, appreciate you being on the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's not often that I get to just, talk a lot about myself or my story. So I'm really excited and flattered and honored. I can't wait to talk about RV tales or wherever the heck we go with this thing today.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So before we get started, though, just introduce yourself in your own words. Who is Liz Wilcox today?
Yeah, so what's up, friends? I'm Liz Wilcox. I am a single mom in my 30s at the time of this recording. I live in Central Florida. I was born in Detroit and I skipped around Michigan a little bit, and then we moved to Florida when I was in high school. And I've always been this type of person that was just, I don't know, if you go to my website or you Google me, you'll laugh. Just a little different than everybody else, just kind of stands out. And as a kid, it was a bad thing, right? Standing out, you don't want to stand out as a kid, but the older I get and the more that I lean into, the inevitable standing out, the more I actually enjoy my life, the more successful I become, and the more that I find that I'm, oddly enough, now inspiring other people to lean into, what makes them stand out and what makes them different too. And that's what we're working with today. That's the Liz Wilcox we're working with today.
That's
Thanks for
cool.
having me.
Absolutely. So, like I said in the intro, part of what, made me want to talk to you at Justin's event is, your RV background, which I know is not part of your life now. But I found it interesting. And those, I've got a lot of RV listeners, but also a lot who are not. So we're going to say your claim to fame in the
Right.
RV
Yeah.
community was talking about poo, which oddly
Oh,
enough, when
yeah.
we're done recording this podcast, we're heading up to a pilot to empty our black tank, and hoping that it stops raining by the time I'm doing that. But um, you know, talk to me a little bit about you know what what was it that made you want to write the book about the
Yeah,
black tank?
sure. So I just want to back it up a little bit. And I don't know about you, but when Dan was saying, speaking of poo, when we get off this call, I was like, where's he going with this? What kind of episode is this going to be? I don't know. That's what I was thinking. Anyway, so yeah, I actually, so my husband at the time and we moved into an RV. He was in the military and, saving money. We knew we weren't going to be stationed. We were moving from New York to Alabama. We knew we weren't going to be in Alabama forever. And it's funny, we were supposed to buy a house, the deal fell through. And he goes, well, Liz, everybody in Alabama lives in a trailer. Why don't we just buy an RV? And we hadn't been married that long, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, but he had been deployed for the majority of that time. So I mentioned that to say he didn't really know me as well as he knows me today. And so I took him up on it. I was like, oh, that's a hell of a deal, a hell of a deal. That's a great idea. And we ended up buying the RV. I kind of called his bluff. I was like, you know what? I hate spending money. I hate cleaning. We're not going to be there forever. Yeah, let's buy a big, travel trailer type of thing. And so we bought it. We moved in. We made all these decisions. I'm talking like 10, 13 days. Okay. And we got into it. And, going with Dan's question, like, why would you write a book about this stuff? Right. We realized not everything was hashtag RV life. You might look on Instagram, look up that hashtag, and you're going to see these beautiful photos of the Grand Canyon and the Badlands. And, what's that national park in Canada that's stunning? You're going to see all these beautiful photos. But we were living in this RV. We found out it had, water damage. We were trying to renovate that. We had a toddler. And I made this joke. I started laughing one day, and, he was very stressed. And he's like, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "This is what happens when you move into something that has a black tank attached to it. You're living with your sewage here, and you have to, like Dan said, oh, we got to dump this after I get off this call with Liz." I said, "This is kind of the curse of the black tank." And, I started this RV travel blog because our goal was to actually get out of the military and start traveling. And I said, "You know what? What I think no one is talking about is this sort of curse of the black tank. Is this, oh yeah, I moved in, I want these beautiful views, this flexible lifestyle." I'm sure Dan has talked about it on the podcast before. But what nobody tells you is sometimes, it is just a load of bull, what? And so I said, we can't be the only ones suffering. We can't be the only ones that, bought a rig, had something go wrong, and, travel plans are delayed because all this nonsense, right? And so I came up with this book, Tales from the Black Tank, a collection of hilariously crappy RV stories. And yeah, a lot of those were actual, POOP stories. Some of them were just, oh, my slide, opened up while we were driving down the road. Oh, our campground was fully booked and we had to drive 1,000 miles before we found a place. Just really crappy tales from the road sort of thing. But with the RV, the black tank is where your sewage goes, if you haven't picked up on that yet. So I just thought it was fun. And it was just this thing I wrote. I was 6-7 months into this blogging journey, and it sort of exploded, no pun intended. And people really resonated with it. And that's when, like I mentioned in my introduction, I was like, oh, the things that make me different, the way that I think that's different, are actually these things that can help me in life. And that's when I really started leaning into those parts of my personality.
Yeah. And I love that. And I love the fact that you can kind of, because like you said, when you look at the typical RV vlogger today that's got their YouTube channel and that sort of stuff, you're right. They're talking about all the wonderful things that this lifestyle brings, which it does. We love it. We have no intention of ending it anytime soon. But I think when you can look at the crappy parts of it and twist it with a little bit of humor as well, it's a good way to approach things without a doubt. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
did you ever think that it would have taken you to where it did? I mean, you ultimately ended up selling the rights to the blog and the book and all that sort of stuff, and kind of really launched you into what you're doing today. But when you first started, did you really think like, this is really going to set me up for the future?
I would say yes and no. I have a lot of confidence. I'm a confident person. So I knew, selling a book was going to lead to the next thing. But I think I just even had an epiphany on the show talking about that's the thing that helped me really lean into and say yes to myself more, because it was just this little idea I had. I had maybe 100 followers, right? I had a few hundred people on an email list, and still to this day I get people, oh, I saw you on that book. I had to figure out, because I don't own the rights anymore. I had to figure out what it is you do. And they add me on Facebook, or join my new business, DM me, whatever. And that part, I didn't I wasn't very cognizant of, this is going to lead to the next thing, and be what it is today. It's wild. A book about poop. Who would have thought?
So, proof that you can turn crap into gold.
Amen. I always, speaking on the inspirational part of this show, one of the reasons I sold that blog was I was starting to get recognized at campgrounds, and people would come, oh, you're the RV poop lady. You're the RV poop lady. And I think I mentioned this when Dan and I met, and I thought, I'm a lot smarter than that. I have a master's degree in leadership. I actually know what I'm doing. And when I sold it, I was like, I'm never going to talk about this book ever again. I don't want to be associated because in my real life, I don't, I'm not one of those potty humor people. I don't find much humor, but I know other people do, right? And for me, the Tales from the Black Tank wasn't just about black tank stories. It was just, the kind of the curse of the black tank. You carry around your sewage going 80 miles down the road, like things are bound to happen, but I've found that it's just so inspiring to people. Like Dan just asked me, like, did you ever think? Right. And it's so, I want to share the message of the poop book because it's like, if I did that and spun it into, a travel business, I partnered with some folks. We had the largest online RV event that I hosted. It turned into a second business, this third business. I actually just bought a fourth business. And it all started with, a stupid little poop joke, a curse of the black tank, right? It's just ridiculous. And so I share it as inspiration for you. Like, if you think it's a silly little idea, like, why not go for it? Whether it's business or just, being brave in conversation and making a joke you wouldn't normally make. Like, you never know where life is going to take you. And usually your gut won't steer you in the wrong direction. And that book was purely from my gut. I never would have wrote that with my mind.
And I love that. I love the fact that, you kind of have this internal battle of, wanting to, not be associated with, want to kind of walk away from it, but yet really having to embrace it. And even the start of it, not being, like you said, the type of person who, is the poop joke girl to kind of start it that way, and then just expand on it. So I guess even in that sense, you were kind of leaving your comfort zone, just even, kind of being a little bit of the poop joke girl.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it turned into a lot of bit of the poop joke girl because people would just DM me these questions, or I'm sorry, these stories, and they would have it pops up in my Facebook memories every year. People posting pictures of themselves like dumping the black tank, which is not a pretty picture, and they would be tagging, Liz Wilcox, Tales from the Black Tank, all this. I mean, it was its own little kind of subculture, and it was fun while it lasted, and then one day I was like, okay, this isn't fun anymore. But I had gained so much experience on how to connect with people and leaning into what feels good in the moment, that I was able to take that and even apply it in my personal life and my professional life.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So let's, enough about poop for today. Maybe we'll go back, but enough for now. So, let's talk about, how that kind of propelled you to what you're doing today. You're kind of like the email queen, we'll say, and have really, reestablished yourself as an authority on email marketing in general, which is something that sadly I have not even come close to mastering yet. So that's a topic for a different day. So, what was it that, once you sold that part and were looking to go the next level, what was it about the whole email concept that drew you in and, made you a master of it?
Yeah, so it was that RV travel blog where I kind of cut my chops. Is that the right phrase? I don't know. English is my first language, but it's still confusing, right? So in business, when I was learning about it, everybody and their mother, you listen to podcasts, go to webinars, whatever, was saying, everything that you do on the surface is to get people onto an email list so you can sell products. And the whole reason I wrote Tales from the Black Tank was, hey, I'm building this email list and I don't really have anything to sell them. I wasn't traveling yet, so I didn't have experience where I could say, hey, here's how you got on the road. We were stationary at the time. And, that's when inspiration struck. Tales from the Black Tank came into play. And just after that, that made something like $7,000 in the first 90 days. It got picked up by an international RV rental company, et cetera, et cetera. You know, and that's when I kind of gave the confidence, like, oh yeah, this email thing does work. And so I got really consistent with it. And Dan will tell you, when you're on the road, sometimes your internet is choppy. You get to a spot that said that they have internet, you know, like Maury Povich, we determined that was a lie, you know. And you just never know what kind of internet situation you have. So being a blogger, that was really difficult because sometimes I didn't have enough bandwidth to get online, write a blog post, make a social media, da 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 da. But I knew that email was really effective if I could just build my list and make those connections there. And that's part of the beautiful thing about RV life. As you go to campgrounds, you meet new people, you make connections. I mean, Dan and I immediately clicked when we both found out we RV'd. I saw his RV in the parking lot, and when he came up to me, I was like, oh, I've been looking for you. I've been wondering whose RV is in the parking lot. You know, it's just kind of an instant connection. So building that email list and making those human to human connections was so awesome for me, especially as we started traveling. You know, you can't just call up your cousin and say, hey, let's hang out on a Friday night, right? You have to constantly be looking for that connection, finding your own network. And my email list was the way that I did it. And it turned out I got really, really good at it. And I actually launched an RV maintenance course, and I had 141 people indicate interest. Yes, Liz, if you create this, I'll buy it, or, you know, I'll consider it or whatever. So I created the course. I had 141 sales. So if you're listening and you're not into business, 100% conversion is out of this world. It's normally 1 to 3%. So as word got out, Dan's smiling like, yeah, that's wild. So as word got out about that, everyone started asking me, well, how did you do that? I said, email. I just email my buddies. And they're like, wait, what? I be emailing, and that's not what happens, right? And so that's when I knew, okay, I need to sell the blog. And like I mentioned, I was getting a little sick of the poop lady thing. And so I was like, oh, this is my next thing. I need to teach people how to build relationships with email so they can actually make a living the way that, you know, I'm clearly making a living. We're now on the road, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it was just really, you know, learning through the RV travel blog. And then people saying, wait, what? You're a blogger, but you barely blog. How are you actually selling? And, you know, once they found out it was my email list, you know, that became very clear that that was my next direction in life.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did, you know, some of the obstacles or challenges, you know, of living in an RV full time and, you know, being an entrepreneur, help you now that you're, you know, you're out of that lifestyle. But again, like the internet issue is, you know, we talk about, you go into campground, one of the things they advertise is, you know, blazing fast internet. You get in there and like, you can barely even check emails. You're like, okay, I guess I'll do this podcast on the hotspot again. You know, because for me, you know, that's one of the things that's always a challenge. I mean, we're literally right now sitting in a parking lot in Temple, Texas. It's raining outside. I didn't know what type of connection we'd have. And, you know, thank God we got a good connection, and, you know, the stars align that we can actually, you know, do this, this podcast without interruptions. But, you know, some of those obstacles that you know, experienced through full-time RVing, how did they help you, get to where you are today and dealing with, you know, a different set of obstacles that come along in your business now?
Absolutely. So it's all about keeping perspective. You know, when you build a business or even just try to live normal life in the RV with the internet, with the, oh, I feel lonely, or especially for me, I was traveling with a toddler. My husband was having some mental health issues. For me, it helped me develop an incredible discipline of myself and also perspective. If I only had 20 minutes, I only had 20 minutes, and I had to be incredibly disciplined and just get the thing done that day, right? Which for me was usually email, because that was the simplest thing. You know, I could just write something up, hit send, get on with my day, get back on the road or whatever, right? And so now that I'm in a house, if I'm ever feeling like, oh, I don't want to do this, I'm uncomfortable, things aren't going my way, I can use that perspective. Remember, Liz, when you used to be hunched over a dinette, trying to upload a video and have it fail? That was torture. You can work for 20 minutes, sister. Like, get it in gear. So I find that compared to some other people that I might have like just a better sense of focus, direction, the ability to actually just do, because when the way that I built my business, I had to really work in the pockets of life. I didn't have the luxury of time or, support or internet literally didn't have the bandwidth, right, that I do now. And so really it helped develop this sense of discipline, really helped develop my character. So now, I can just sit down, get things done, get on with my day. Hashtag no excuses. I tend to be a no excuses type of person. And then the second part of that is also it helps me relate to my current following or customers, whatever you want to call them, email list. When someone comes to me and says, hey, my life is really hard, I'm having a hard time building these complex systems that people teach about, I say, oh, well, everything that I teach is built from, stealing internet from a Lowe's parking lot, having a toddler ask you for a peanut butter sandwich on a live show, this, that, and the other, right? So I've also created systems in my business, created a model, created a framework for others that really is just that, from that perspective of get it done. I've got 20 minutes. I've got to just be super disciplined for this small amount of time. And that's really helped shape a lot of things in my life too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. And I love, when you talk about just, the perspective and, kind of being flexible, even with just recording this podcast. And when we first booked it, I knew we would be in in the midst of an 11-day stretch of boondocking. We're between campgrounds. I'm doing a little, book signing tour throughout Texas and Louisiana here. So, as soon as we booked it, I was like, okay, I got to make sure we can get to a spot where I can get parked. Sandy and I, before the podcast, we went into a little train museum here on a rainy day because it was something, and, I had my, alarm set on the phone to make sure I was back out in the RV in enough time to get set up and do this. So you really do become resilient and, become flexible and, understand what the framework of what you have to work within, so, we were at a place where we were volunteering, and when you were talking about, stealing internet from the Lowe's, I was able to, go into their offices where we were volunteering to upload videos and podcasts and stuff like that. And it's like, oh my God, this is so fast compared to what I'm usually dealing with.
Yeah, but that was like luxury. That was flying
Absolutely.
first class, baby.
Absolutely. So
Dan is so amazing. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want to say, like, the fact that he set up his whole day around this interview, first of all, I'm just so flattered. Second, like, wow, what a guy. You're listening to a guy that is just so, like, heart of gold. If you haven't left him a review on iTunes or something yet, like, go ahead, hit pause, leave him a review, because as someone who knows just how hard it can be to schedule something, like, a lot of thought went into just this one episode, like having, we're going to hit up this train museum and then we're going to park here. It's so much thought, y'all. If you have never RV'd, you have no idea. It's so much work. And I love the word that he used, resilient. It really does make you resilient. And it makes you able to, like, have plans in Jello, right? And just be able to move. I picture it like if I've got a bunch of Post-it notes on my wall and just be able to move all those parts and put the puzzle together. Oh, Dan's got it going on. I'm so impressed by you today.
Well, thank you. The one thing I'm not juggling, though, is a toddler like you were. So, I can't imagine adding that part into the Jello as well. Doing all that with a toddler.
Yeah, I just had a rule. I'm the boss. Okay. I know some parents, it's hard, but I just, strap her to my back. Let's go. But I will say, just side note, funny story. I was doing a sponsored interview. So someone was paying me to come onto I think it was wholesale warranties, so warranties for RVers. And they were paying me to do this interview. And my daughter came up and was like, I'm hungry. And then she saw the video and she saw herself, and she was a toddler at the time. So that was like extremely novel, right? And she was like, oh, and this was before, pre-COVID. So nowadays it's more acceptable, like everybody knows, so I was incredibly mortified. I was like, oh my gosh, is this breach of contract? But they were cool with it. But it's just what Dan said, like being resilient, being able to go with the flow. Hey, it's raining, or even seizing the opportunity. Like he said, oh, we were volunteering. I noticed, they said yes to me coming into their office. Bada bing, bada boom. I've got some episodes uploaded, right? Like being able to seize the opportunity when you have one is another like amazing skill that RVing teaches you.
Yeah, no doubt. Even yesterday, we were in a coffee shop. We met actually one of my former podcast guests. We got together. It's one of the cool things about traveling podcasting RVer, is I get to do a virtual interview like this, and then find out that we're going to be passing through their area and get together. And we met him in a coffee shop, and so there's 6 other people sitting there doing something on their computer, and Sandy's like, well, we should come back and you can do some stuff. I'm like, well, that would be great, except I'm not actually ready to upload anything right now. I still got to do some editing and have to add some some content and some text to the stuff. But that is a great idea if I was actually ready to upload it. So so yeah, it's always that adjusting and being able to go with the flow. And I loved what you said about the Jello concept, because it is constantly juggling. And for you, being able to kind of use that, and for anybody watching this on video, you can tell I've got a couple years on Liz. But I think for you at your age to really kind of grasp that, and some of the stuff that you've been through. I mean, again, I can't even fathom raising a toddler in the RV environment. And sometimes we have our hands full with the dog, because he is the boss. I mean, you established that you were the boss to your daughter. Well, he's established right off the bat that he's the boss to me and my wife, period. End of story. No exceptions. But and then, going through a divorce, and, becoming a single mom, and just kind of reinventing yourself to, again, not let any of that stuff knock you down, and, continue to thrive. I mean, what is it about, you already mentioned you're very confident, but what is it that allows you to kind of, just keep moving forward regardless of what life has thrown at you?
I'm just so grateful to have a life, I mean, this is so cliche, but you're not guaranteed tomorrow. I'm not guaranteed 3 o'clock. You know what I mean? You just never know. And this is going to switch gears a little bit, maybe change the vibe. But when I was 21, I had just turned 21. My brother was killed by a drunk driver. And, of course, I was devastated. It took a few years to process, but we were 4 years apart, and our birthdays are like 1 day apart. And so I knew the exact moment that I became older than he was when he passed. And in that, fact, in that realization, I was like, and this is going to sound silly, I was like, I ain't going down like no punk. My poor brother, he had a rough childhood. He didn't graduate high school because he was in jail. He went to prison when he was around 23 years old, got out of prison, and then was gone within, I think it was like less than a year. Okay. And so he didn't have a chance to right his wrongs. He didn't have a chance to live the life that he wanted to live. When he passed, the last conversation I had with him was, I'm miserable. I hate my job. I want to get a divorce. I made a mistake. I can't eat. I can't sleep at night. And 3 days later, boom, sorry, time's up. And I'm not going down like that. And, having that of course, I wish I had my brother, but learning that lesson, I'm not going to take that in vain. If anything good can come out of it, it's learning that I'm not guaranteed tomorrow. And it's keeping that perspective that Dan and I were talking about. The RV gives you a lot of perspective about what is actually hard and what's not. And leaning into, okay, if I'm not guaranteed tomorrow, what do I want to do today to feel good about where I'm going in life, to make sure I'm not like, oh, I can't sleep, I can't eat, I hate my wife, I hate my life, I hate that, you know what I mean? I don't ever want to go out like that. I want to go out knowing full well that I did everything that I could to get to my personal definition of success. And I did everything that I could to help, spread love in the world and just be happy and spread that happiness. So that's really like deep down where that comes from.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think, to be grateful is so important. And I think one thing that, we've gained perspective on is that being in the moment and living in the moment and understanding that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. And you just never know. Again, I know you're a 90s girl and I'm a, little earlier, but, David, at the time of this recording, David Crosby has just passed away, and he had a quote. I'll mess it up a little bit, but he had a quote that said, time is the greatest currency, and it's not money, it's not power, it's time. And the truth is, we just don't know how much we have. Like, how much power you have at times, how much money you have. We never know how much time we have, and that does put such a incredible perspective on just approaching life in general. And that's something that I think we've been able to gain quite a bit, because we have suffered a lot of loss since we've started this journey. Friends of ours who were saying, yeah, once we retire, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to sell the house, get an RV, travel with our kids. And he never made it to retirement age. He passed away, a few months after that conversation. So I think, if there's one thing that I think will, allow some of those losses we experience in our life is, again, not letting them be in vain. Like when your brother passed at such a young age, yeah, you would rather have him here with you today. There's no doubt about that. But if you can use that as inspiration, I think that's one of the things. I mean, same with, my mother passed away at, again, a relatively young age of 63 suddenly, from a massive heart attack. And what we're doing today is keeping her legacy alive. So I think when you can kind of take those losses and turn them into inspiration is pretty special. And I think that the earlier in our lives that we can understand that, the better. So again, kudos to you to figure that out earlier than what I did. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I think with grief, a lot of people lose their spirit, right? It can become so overwhelming. But if you can find a way to, find your spirit in those moments, to use it as inspiration for, like Dan just quoted, time is currency and we never know how much of it we actually have, then life gets so exciting because you don't waste a moment. And, if you, we talked about the RV life, now my email thing, and just even, where I grew up, I've experienced so much I'm 34 in my 34 years. But it's all because, I've really taken that in the last 10 years, 15 years and been like, okay, what am I going to do with this moment? What am I going to do with this day? And really just maximizing that time. And that's not to say I don't rest. Y'all, I rest all the time. I love trash television. That's my idea of rest. I slept 10 hours last night, but really just maximizing those moments, living in the moment, saying, heck no, I'm not waiting till retirement because that might not come. I'm going to RV right now. And worst thing that can happen is I hate it and I move back into a house, right? just taking those moments and saying yes to them when it feels good is just worth so much in life, so much in life.
Yeah. And I think what you just, the point you just made is that, people do think like when you're in that moment that there isn't rest time, there isn't care for yourself time. But I think that's all part of being in the moment, is making sure that you are healthy and rested and taking that me time, and whatever that is, whatever that me time is for you, whether it's, like you said, watching trash television or, I love sleeping for 10 hours if we can pull that off for sure. But I think that's all part of it, is really that, self-care component. That is part, I think that allows us to, continue to be grateful and continue to live in the moment. So I love that you brought that up, because again, in our society, people want to talk about, grind, 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 don't sleep, all that sort of stuff, and just, keep at it. And I just think that's such a terrible message. Just such a terrible message.
Yeah, it's all, I don't know if balance is the right word, but it's more like a pendulum. Sometimes you're in that high energy and it's, go, go, go. You're really excited about something, but the pendulum swings back. And if you don't use that time to rest, then that's really not good. Like even last year, so I've developed in my 30s a lot of food allergies. I don't know, like 50 of them or something. I can't even look at chicken anymore. And stopping eating certain foods actually made me really sick. I had low iron, low vitamin C, all these things. And so pretty much all of 2022, I had to learn to re-eat, and I couldn't work the way that I normally do. I'm a very high energy person. Again, just Google me. You'll be like, oh yeah, I get it. Or I guess you've been listening to me ramble for 40 minutes. You get it. And so I really had to sit and rest, and like quite literally sit and rest. And, instead of researching ways to make more money or whatever, research, how do I get enough iron into my system? And just, but it's all that, again, going back to practicing gratitude and being grateful, even that, okay, number one, I figured out it was food allergies that made me feel like I was choking 24/7. Right? I figured that out. So now I'm grateful to be able to learn how to re-eat. Because if I hadn't learned that I was allergic, I would still be experiencing these other symptoms, right? And so it's just, staying rooted in that gratitude, however small it has to be right now. Like even for me, people would say, oh, I don't know. Oh, that's so awful. These food allergies. I'm like, what? Ever since I stopped eating, bread and chicken and this and that, I feel so much better. Like, and now I get to learn about nutrition, which I never had any idea, So just staying rooted in that gratitude, I think, is so important, and will help when the pendulum is swinging towards, yes, I need to take action, or no, I think I need to sit down and rest right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, just to add to that gratitude component, there, one of the, I'll preface this with saying that since we've been traveling full-time RV, like we've had very few issues. We talked to some of our friends, and it seems like every other week they're running into some sort of issue. But one time, it was back, I think July of 2021, we were at a girls' baseball tournament in Maryland, and we get to the parking lot. I was actually doing an interview with the general manager of the minor league club that was based next to the complex, or at the Ripken complex in Aberdeen, Maryland. And we get there and we start to put our slide out, and it decides it wants to stop halfway in, halfway out, and just will not go either direction. And this was like right again in the midst of the supply chain issues, and just even trying to get RV maintenance and RV mobile repair guys. So what was supposed to be just hanging out for the day in the parking lot and heading out, and we were supposed to be on our way the next day, turned into, me letting the general manager of the team know that, hey, by the way, we're probably going to be in your parking lot for about 3 days, just so you know. And he was cool with it. And the way the slide was stuck, we were still actually able, it was our bedroom slide, so our drawers and everything, it was out far enough that we could still get to all of our clothing and all that sort of stuff. And then as it turned out, that extra day that we ended up staying, that we didn't think we would be at the tournament, I ended up doing like 7 podcasts that day, on site, and we're still, some of the best podcasts I've recorded, because a lot of them were like in the moment. Some of them I knew I had, we were getting them scheduled, but others were just like, hey, we need to do an interview. Let's do an interview. So there were so many things that could have went wrong because of that incident, but just the way everything happened, it actually turned out to be an incredible, grateful experience for us at that point, because it gave me opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise, had the slide been working. So again, it was just like, all right, this happened, but you know what? All these other good things came from this one bad thing that happened. So I think that perspective and being grateful is always so important.
Without a doubt. And it goes back to what we were talking about, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes ago, about learning when to seize an opportunity. Like, okay, this is less than ideal, but what am I gonna do with the moment? And keeping that gratitude piece really helps, to Dan's point about, being able to, hey, what am I gonna, I'm gonna turn lemons into lemonade type of situation. I love that so much.
Yeah. And there's a lot worse places in my mind to be stranded at than in the parking lot of a minor league baseball stadium in a baseball complex with my sports background. So again, things could
Yeah,
have been
that
so
sounds
much
like fun
worse.
to me. Like, oh
So
no, the slide, honey.
yeah, so it worked out. It worked out. So um Liz, we talked about so many different things, but is there anything that we missed that you want to bring up to the listeners that you think would bring them value?
Yeah, so I think the last thing that I usually end on in conversations like this, is just as far as, keeping that perspective, gratitude, uh, you know, learning to make the most out of grief, all that. There are two questions I always ask myself and filter everything through, whether it's, business, professional, personal life, relationships, whatever. I always ask myself 2 questions, and maybe, as you're listening, this might help you the next time you're feeling stressed or you just want to have a better day. So, number one, I ask myself, what would this look like if it was easy? And sometimes it's just not going to be easy, right? I can't figure out that slide issue. This is not easy, right? And then I always have this backup question of, what would this look like if it was fun? And I think Dan's example of the slide and the podcast interviews is a perfect example of him turning it into a fun situation for him, right? For me, minor league baseball, I mean, all right, I might go check out the guys, something like that. But so I was just filtering through, what would this look like if it was easy? And if it can't be easy, what would this look like if it was fun? And that's really helped me the last 5-6 years, make life really this like one awesome, amazing experience that I can't wait for more and more days. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I think it definitely will be. Liz, how can people find you if they want to find out more about your email list, if they want to join your email list? How can they find Liz Wilcox on the internet?
Yeah, of course, I'm an email marketer. So thanks, Dan, for letting me shout myself out here. You can go directly to lizwilcox.com. In the top right-hand corner, you're going to see a hot pink button. You can't miss it. It says free email swipes. And that's going to give you just everything you need to get started with email, welcome sequence, subject lines, newsletter examples, all that mumbo jumbo. If it makes sense to you, you should sign up. If you just want to get in contact with me directly, want to chat about anything we talked about, always happy to make friends. So you can find me, just Google Liz Wilcox. I think there's a picture of me actually at the summit that Dan and I met. I'm in a American flag t-shirt and a jean jacket, I believe. So that's me, or I'm holding a microphone. So Liz Wilcox, you can always just add me as a friend, say, oh yeah, I heard you through Dan, and we can take it from there. Can't wait to meet you.
Cool. So Liz, that brings us to our final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things and the whole world changes. So what's one of the little things that Liz does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place?
I love this question so much. I give out compliments everywhere I go. If you're checking me out at the gas station, I say, oh, I love your glasses. If I walk past you and you're just kind of in the zone. Oh my gosh, I love your jeans. Those look really good on you. Or, oh my gosh, blue is a perfect color. That's a great t-shirt. Just any little thing that I can find to compliment someone when I have an interaction in public, I do. And I find that, when I give a compliment, their whole demeanor, vibe, face changes. And, it's just my hope that I've changed even, the next 5 minutes of their day, that they feel a little better and, sleep a little better at night too.
Yeah, I love that. And that is so cool. I love that concept. And I don't want to get too derailed, but just a little story to that is the other day we were at a coffee shop and I was wearing a Woodstock sweatshirt because one of our first trips went to the old Woodstock festival site up in New York. And as I got up, a woman behind me said, "Oh, I love your sweatshirt. Were you at Woodstock?" Which, first of all, I was like, all right, is this a compliment or not? Because I am older than Liz, but I'm not that much older than Liz. So I was like, no, I wasn't at the festival. I was actually born in 1969, but I was not at the festival. I was about 29 days old when the festival took place. I said, but we visited it, and it was fascinating to me. And then she started to tell me, well, my husband, who was sitting over there, was actually at Woodstock. And so I ended up going over and talking to him, and we probably had a good 15, 20-minute conversation just talking about Woodstock. And here, he didn't actually realize that there was a museum at the festival site now, and you could actually go up and tour it. So he was like, well, that's definitely on my bucket list now, to actually go up and see what the site looks like now compared to, what it was then. And I can't even fathom what that might be like for him when he does experience that, to actually have been there and now go back and see what it's like now and see the museum and that sort of stuff. But it all was led from a compliment about my sweatshirt, even though it was a
absolutely
kind of two types of compliments. She thought I was 20 years older than I am, but it was still a compliment, and it led to good things.
You look great, Dan. You look great. Don't let anybody else tell you different.
You look great for 74. That's great, but I'm 54. So it is what it is. Anyway, Liz, this was great. We probably could have talked for hours, but I know people do have a limited attention span, so we had to wrap it up. But this was great. I can't wait to see you again, whether it's when we're down in Florida, to look you up and get together and have a drink or something at a coffee shop or whatever. But really looking forward to it. And for folks out there listening, be sure to check out my blogs and other podcasts at journeymymotherson.com or danclouser.com. While you're there, pick up a copy of one of my books, Beauty of a Diamond Through the Eyes of a Coach, or The Journey of My Mother's Son, Volume 1. Liz, again, thanks so much for being on the show. This was great.